Matt, so Evercore ISI looks at alternative data, specifically downloads of apps that help us travel. And I think this data is so interesting because at the end of the day, we do see a lot of hedge funds and other folks use this to try to look at high frequency data to get an edge on what the slower frequency data tells us. So the thesis here is that Europeans have a cultural affinity for travel, which means that their recovery will be quicker than the rest of the world. And at least judging by the end of June, we did see app downloads recover quicker in Europe than anywhere else. Interesting to look at places like North America, for example, which looked like it was posing a recovery. You can see it in white there, but since has started to wane as coronavirus cases start to spike. And of course, they're still unable to come to the EU. Now, one of the interesting tidbits within this data, and Matt, I know you talked about this earlier, is the fact that a lot of the downloads are coming from alternative apps. So things like Airbnb, where you're not staying at a chain hotel. This is, of course, worrying to people who are looking for this recovery to support some of these bigger industries, some of these more well-known names.
And let me ask you about, so this is travel from one country to another. We're talking about that opening up. But what about traveling within countries? So from one part of a country to another. Are people back? Are people taking public transport using trains?
That certainly is picking up. If you think about holidays, certainly easy to travel within the country now. But of course, going to your workplace is another thing, mostly by public transportation. We have seen those figures come up. Interestingly, though, if you look at countries like Greece, Athens, preparing for more tourists, they've seen some of the greatest improvements, the closest back to normal in terms of public transportation use. But a place like London, you can see it at the bottom of that chart, is still struggling to get back to normal, still more than 60% away from where they were before the coronavirus outbreak. Now, part of this might be the fact that you have a workforce in places like London who can more easily telework. Still, it has a long way to go to when we're back to normal. So perhaps if you're visiting some of these European countries, you're more likely to use public transportation in Greece and Berlin than you are London. Matt, Anna?